Hey, look! They still make these! While this title is easily not going to be the next big thing, there are still games being made that use the world MMO style that are starting to come about, and we've been waiting for a bit to see this one come to fruition. It's made by the developer of two games I enjoyed very much, so I'd love to see what kind of offering that they've got this time. So, let's look into the world of huntable monsters that plays nothing like Monster Hunter. This is the MMO Grinder, and it's time to look at Dragomon Hunter. Dragomon Hunter is a 3D fantasy MMO brought to us by XLegend, a Taiwanese developer I've mistakenly referred to as Chinese more than a few times, and makers of previously reviewed titles Eden Eternal and Aura Kingdom. Dragomon Hunter also features an alternate title in its native country, as it's known as Dragon Slayer. That localized and extremely derivative title meant to invoke some sort of combination of Pokemon and Monster Hunter? That's all in the publisher Area Games. We'll have a little more to say on that, trust me. I've tended to enjoy XLegend's offerings in the past, so now let's see what their latest title has in store. Well, let's get this out of the way right at the start. This is kawaii with the side of sugoi all over the place. If you aren't a fan of chibi, then this may as well send you running for the hills, as this art style and cutesy nature seeps into every aspect of the game. Even the monsters' designs of creatures can be incredibly softened when a thought bubble with happy rainbows and musical notes dancing while their children prance around excitedly. All this before you brutally murder them. It really calls into question if what you're doing is morally right or even justifiable. I don't know, maybe I've been playing too much Undertale, but there's something that just seems wrong about seeing a group of non-aggressive monsters with a mother clearly singing to their babies, all of which have hearts over their heads, before I line up a flame wall to burn them all alive at once. It might leave you feeling incredibly conflicted, and is yet another massive shift in tone from what the cutesy style suggests. It seems XLegend is really into its design dissonance phase of development, though we must admit that Dragomon is far less polished than Aura Kingdom. The animations and effects just don't look as nice, and the areas are far more Spartan and plainly textured, and the villages are rather flat and generic. What really ended up bugging me is the general issues that had come up with the graphics and the UI. In general, the UI seems rather lackluster and fairly cluttered. It's functional, but it doesn't seem to mesh well with the game. However, usually after an hour or so of play, I'll notice strange issues popping up. Enemies will have 2 or 3 names layered over their regular name, or they'll be fully replaced. My pet tended to have this happen to them quite often as well. There was odd issues with polygons being stretched out of place that would appear at random. I have no idea what's causing it, and it doesn't seem to have any rhyme or reason beyond having been logged in for a while. While making comparisons, we want to take time to address some criticism that the game has been receiving for quite some time now, and we feel rather unfairly. See, the game's trailers decided it needed to cash in on the hype and flash with little substance, and it led to a lot of people claiming that this was nothing but a Monster Hunter knockoff. In truth, these games are nothing alike, outside of extremely base comparisons like getting loot from monsters that you hunt. But this is generic MMO loot drops, and you craft sets of generic armor that you don't even get to see, most of it not even pertaining to the monsters that you'd killed to make it. Here's the most common thing I'd seen, when people would claim that this monster called the Molten King is a 1-for-1 copy of a monster called Teostra. This is a manticore. It's a classic legendary beast. Capcom didn't invent the manticore, they just gave it a different name. Detractors try to counter this, of course. But it has backwards facing horns! Manticore. But it's covered in fire! Manticore. But it's Manticore, 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 Manticore. We'll discuss this more in gameplay, but needless to say, if someone is claiming this game ripped off of Monster Hunter, you can be safely assured that they had never played it personally. For more details on this, feel free to visit mmogrinder.net, where we'll have a special post about what it means to be a ripoff, derivative, or unique. Getting back to the game, there are a few pet peeves that we can safely level at it. For starters, and what will become clear to everyone within minutes of playing, Dragomon is meme fodder heaven. It's in the quest names, the dialogue options, the character names, the monster names, the items. You can plaster your wall with the amount of dank memes on display. Lest we forget my first impressions video where I highlighted that one of the quest's name is Senpai Noticed Me. This is another case of meme overload, but again we aren't as put off by it here because the game does not take itself so seriously, and tries to keep things lighthearted all throughout. There are some that even made us chuckle when we'd read the quest name and then just try to figure out how the meme of the day would fit in. The game's music is alright. Nothing that really stands out for being spectacular, but there isn't anything bad here. Even if the music does sound out of place at times. You can be running through a twisted, nightmarish world of massive thorned vines, gnarled dead trees, hideous monsters, and be given the most lighthearted tropical siesta song outside of a commercial for Island Rum. More than once we were asked to kill little baby monsters just playing around with their parents or friends, and did it to a soundtrack that was only missing a synthesized electronica to be considered a Kevin MacLeod song. While at first that sounds amusing, this is certainly a game where bringing your own soundtrack is very much advised, though there are some exceptions. For one of the quests at level 30, we hope you enjoy hardcore choir-backed butt rock. It's a shame the music work seems to be an afterthought, and seemingly no effort was placed into ensuring that appropriate music would play based on your situation or environment. This leads us nicely into the hilarious voice acting, which is so over-the-top and out of place it can be downright comical. At least in English. If you need that extra touch of weeb, you can have all the characters speak in a Japanese language track. Yes, I'm well aware this is a Taiwanese game, but the alternate voice language is Japanese. While dipping into character creation for a second, we'd like to make very clear a recommendation that when choosing your character's voice, you pick the shortest clip, or preferably the least grating to you. You see, that voice clip that you select isn't just a sample. It's the exact phrase your character will shout out every single time they use specific abilities, and for most of the classes, that ability is incredibly spammable.
Don't underestimate me. Don't underestimate me. Don't underestimate me. Don't underestimate me.
It didn't take long for "Don't underestimate me" to become a running meme, and the out-of-place command of "Die" to be a welcomingly brief soundbite. This extends even further to other voice clips, like the mage starting out with some simple shouting for their spells, but their efforts to match those high-energy yells of the Japanese voice actors fast descend into full-blown psychotic shrieking. Some of the attacks sound alright, some of them sound incredibly weak, and others are very over-the-top. It's incredibly inconsistent in its application, but fortunately the sounds aren't downright terrible. It would have been nice to see more effort into its sounds, as Aura Kingdom had generally solid sound work, so we know XLegend can do far better in this aspect of game design. Starting out, we have the standard character creator, where you pick from one of 4 classes. Clerics who can use hammers or cestus and act as support characters that can deal surprising amounts of damage. Mages who can wield a staff or blow a hunting horn and focus on damage or support skills. Mercenaries who can wield an axe or sword and are your tanky damage dealers. And finally, scouts who can use twin swords or choose to throw out the usual fantasy playbook and load up with a semi-automatic rifle. The customization has a very limited amount of things that you can do to really make your character stand apart from others, though you probably won't be seeing anyone else, but we'll get into that later. There is one exception to this, as once you make your character, you'll be asked to customize the look of your hop-along, a bunny-like companion that'll aid you in combat and give you buffs. Some of the customization here is rather amusing, with the highlight being the all-white bulging eyes. Bunny has seen things you cannot comprehend. You'll get to choose your companion's name as well. From here you'll be dropped into the game proper, which will do its best to teach you the very basics of combat. We're pleased to report that the game does use a rather nice action combat system, including using the mouse for some attacks which will free up space to allow for faster reactions from players while giving maneuverability. Well, that is in theory, as once again we have another game that has a bad habit of hard-locking your character into position for every attack. This conflicts with another system, that of the now ubiquitous red telegraphed attacks that are found in a lot of action combat MMOs. As the standard, you're supposed to dodge out of the way before that red gets filled in, and the current area covered in red will take a beating. The unfortunate truth is that the current system in Dragomon is incredibly buggy, with the red indicators often being very misleading, or not showing up at all, which can spell out instant death. This is a major problem that we're surprised hasn't been ironed out yet. Once you get the hang of combat, you'll find that Dragomon plays like your typical fantasy MMORPG. Kill quests, fetch quests, and you have all the usual suspects here. Thankfully, with the game going into open beta and then launch, there's a very convenient auto-pathing system allowing players to tune out while traveling between objectives. though some key differences come in the odd way that levels are handled, alternate weapons, companion gear, the monster system, ranching, and crafting. For starters, the most obvious difference is that your character actually has 2 separate levels, not counting faction levels, that go up at different rates as you play. First is your character level, which dictates what level gear that you can equip and your general experience. And the second is Hunter level, which goes up at a slightly accelerated rate and it'll give you points to place within your stats. Your major milestones for levels will be 20, where you can begin using your class's secondary weapon and abilities, and level 30, where you can choose your specialization, which locks in which one of the 2 weapons you'll want to use, and alters your abilities. Once you're specialized, you can also spend points to give various passives or alternate effects to your abilities. Keep in mind, though, that as you level, you need to ensure that your hop-along has a steadily increasing quality of gear so that they can continue to assist you. To do this, simply equip an appropriate weapon and any armor type that you think will work best for your particular hop-along's build, and you're set. Your hop-along can also change to various types, assuming that you acquire enough specialty books to transform them into other unique classes, that in turn will use specific weapons. We want to say that after hitting level 20, which should take about 15 minutes and flies by like nothing, the leveling curve begins at an odd behavior, and by level 30, things begin to slow to such a halt, and once you hit 35, just prepare for all of the grind. What complicates the steep spike in leveling is that you're actually limited in the amount of quests that you can do, and the main mission quests and side quests can be locked away behind level caps. As an example, you may be level 28 and your next quest states you need to be level 30, so you better hope you have enough dailies left to do or repeatable quests or you're out of luck for the day. The current limits seem to be 25 hunts and 30 missions per day, which, while sounding like a lot, can sometimes barely move the meter when you get into later aspects of the game. The odd choices don't stop there, and this next one is perhaps the best sort of mad science experiment that we've seen. See, the game decided that titles will grant you bonuses and buffs, which is common for XLegend, but that's not the quirky, off-the-rocker stuff that we're interested in. What Dragomon allows you to do is actually make your own titles by combining various prefix and suffix titles that you earn in various forms, leading to some absolutely hilarious titles floating over players' heads. Hell, Kurochi managed to make a real winner when he was running around being known as the original yaoi fangirl. There's some goofy gems like Cool Biz and Little Turd. Some of my personal favorite combinations have been Moody Malarkey Merlin, Heaven-Piercing Anatomy Lesson, and Drakey Breaky Endeavor Have I Ever. This system is honestly very clever, and you could spend a long time just trying to find and earn the most absurd title combos to create facepalm-worthy bragging rights. Right out of the gate, you'll notice just how quiet the community seems to be. You'll rarely see more than dungeon runs and guild recruiting or trade offers. This isn't actually the fault of the community at all, because these spam bots are so rampant and so bad that you literally cannot see anything in chat for more than a blink of an eye. The most hilarious aspect of all this is that somehow, in some manner, the spam bots actually found an exploit that managed to get them into the game's announcements channel, flooding everyone. While this is a problem that can be toned down dramatically over time, it's best to go in prepared to shut off the chat and just hope for the best. The only counter for botting in the game is for farming bots, and clearly not spammers. Occasionally when you're out and about, you'll see a CAPTCHA spawn in the upper left corner of the screen. Entering the CAPTCHA in time will grant you an experience bonus for 10 minutes. If you fail to enter it, you'll end up with a warning. Miss or ignore the CAPTCHA 3 times and you'll receive a debuff penalty that renders your character borderline useless for 10 minutes, nerfing XP gains and your overall power. Remember how I said the UI was a bit broken? Yeah, I was once receiving warning messages about missing the CAPTCHA without ever having the CAPTCHA pop up on screen, and yes, I still ended up with the debuff. Another amusing aspect about the game is that you can physically hide all other players that aren't within your party, and this actually is a pretty good thing to do for performance reasons. You'll have a few moments where enemies will be randomly attacked and killed by thin air, but it has an amusing charm to it. If you want to hide other players, just look for the eye symbol in the top right corner and click it. Now, as we said, hiding players will still show those within your party, and making a party is pretty beneficial. Besides having more people to focus on larger threats, you'll actually get an experience bonus for the larger your party is, and having more party members within that same region. There's a bit of questionable move where you'll get to read through every little thing that anyone in your party loots, so it can be hard to keep track of what's yours and what someone else did on the fly. Yet the benefits outweigh the drawbacks, as using a party can easily help power level a newbie up decently quick. Naturally, being an MMO, there's a guild system, and it too has a lot of benefits for its members. Though we do need to make one thing clear, that you cannot join or create a guild until you reach level 15, but that should only take you about a half hour at the most since the leveling curve is that lopsided. The price for starting a guild will set you back 100 gold, which takes a fair bit to raise up, but once you hit level 20 you start getting gold at an increased rate. Once your guild is officially created, you'll be given the ability to teleport to your guild hall, much like Aura Kingdom before it. Here you'll find merchants and craftsmen, as well as an NPC who will accept donations and materials to upgrade the guild to the next level, each increasing level giving more benefits to the entire guild. Though we should stress that the guild system uses an activity system that decays at a rate of 30 points each day, but can be countered by each member that logs in for 1 point, or refilling the meter by leveling the guild up. What this means is that only the larger guilds can really continue the system just through logins, and we have no idea what will happen when the number reaches 0. Though we hope the guild won't simply vanish, this is something to be aware of. I'll be sure to include an annotation once we find out in a couple days what actually will happen when we reach 0. My contact from Area Games made mention that Area was doing its best to pull away from the pay-to-win stigma its publications tended to have. And, well, that's once again going to depend on what you would consider pay-to-win. This game is easy enough on its own, no doubt, and there's nothing that's really going to guarantee you'll have an easier time playing it that you could just find in the cash shop. Mounts are easy enough to earn in-game. Outfits are given out as rewards for quests constantly. Even the mild stat boost that you can get on the pieces in the cash shop can be found on those earned costumes, and that small percentage boost to a stat isn't going to be enough to make a major difference to anyone but min-maxers. It's your call, really. Fortunately, as a counter to the usual cash shop, you can earn loyalty points just by playing the game and sending greetings to people on your friends list. The unfortunate part is that the prices are incredibly inflated, as you would expect when trying to drive traffic just to pay, but here it seems a little too inflated for what you get. Really, the loyalty shop will be most likely used for buying the Falcon coins to gamble for better items on the cheap. Yes, there's a bit of a gambling system built into the game known as Falcons Fortune, which requires the titular coins and will have various items on its boards that changes within each week. Falcons Fortune is separated into multiple tiers of prizes, with Dragomon points acting as a bust and locking in that prize. When you first hit the play button, you will begin spinning on the first tier. Assuming that you don't land on Dragomon points, you can then choose to hit play again, which will move you up to the next tier, but until you bust out or earn the prize that you like, you'll only have to spend a single Falcon coin. While using the loyalty in Falcons Fortune, you can get pretty much anything in the cash shop, and that's a good thing, but one prohibitively expensive and the other is a complete luck of the draw mode, so it'll come down to your personal taste if this system really has taken away any feelings of pay to win. I have to say, I was greatly looking forward to playing Dragomon Hunter when it was first announced, and I had enough fun with it starting out. But it's not really as enticing as XLegend's other titles. No matter what side of the fence you're on about this game being derivative, it's just not as interesting to play as the games that came before it. Even a serious turn that the game took seemed like too little too late, and once the grind wall hits, you might not have any reason to go forward. Still, I think there's elements here that people will find appealing, but there's plenty more out there that might fit better for you. Here's my final rating. Let it always be said that XLegend is great at making their game simple to learn and play. While there's plenty of things that stand out as a bit more complex, even needlessly so, the very base game is easy enough without delving into the more nuanced aspects of upgrading. The company's colorful world is once again at play here, even if they aren't as numerous or as imaginative as previous titles. The kawaii is real, and that has certain appeal to people. Beginners to MMOs should feel right at home here too, so it's a good game for someone looking to get into the basics of the genre. While I once again don't feel that heading to the cash shop is a required trip, there's no doubt that the costumes are not only the best way to secure what your character is wearing, but the XP and stat boosters can be helpful, if not skirting the damning title of pay to win. Luckily, a lot of the cash shop stuff can be purchased with the earnable loyalty points, allowing you to save up to get the items that you want. If you're into a gamble, you can also buy and earn chances in the Falcons Fortune minigame to net some of the better stuff in the game, provided you're that lucky. Like Aura Kingdom before it, the combat here is based on spammable abilities and no type of mana system. All fights boil down to spamming your abilities until the bad thing dies. Since fights never move out of this norm, fighting will seem repetitive very quickly. Since the inclusion of telegraphed high-damage attacks in Aura Kingdom did little to up the challenge, Dragomon kicked it up a notch by making these attacks hurt a lot, and it's not uncommon for them to kill you in one shot. The biggest problem being the unreliability of those telegraphs, leading to many a cheap and sudden and completely unavoidable death. This stems further from the numerous and frankly odd glitches that you can come across, and I've yet to come across an XLegend titled this inelegant. I feel like I would have noticed this in the other ones. In fact, this is easily the weakest offering from XLegend that I've played. It features the XLegend staples, bad and good, from SUPAH KAWAII art to the weird end-level grind walls that seem to reveal that the company just forgot how to finish their game, but it features none of the imagination of the multi-class system of Eden Eternal, or intriguing twisted story of Aura Kingdom. I kinda wish this game had ripped off Monster Hunter. At least it would have offered up something different enough from its other titles to make it stand out. It's practically Aura Kingdom 2, but with nothing that made Aura Kingdom special. Next time, I'm looking into another somewhat fresh title that kinda snuck up on me, and with a genre that I tend to enjoy. Well, that's one thing out of beta at least. Still like, what, 5 more to go? Still holding on to hopes that I'll at least see Blade and Soul or Black Desert come into a reviewable status within the next month. At least before MagFest. I need something else for people to get mad at me for. Window to the Left will bring you to the nearly completely unwatched yet weirdly well-received video on Rocket League. I figured some kind of interest would have been drummed up for that November update, but I guess those people are already playing it. Window on the Right will take you to my first impressions of Paladins, which is fast becoming polarizing for a title that's barely out of alpha. I liked it enough-ish, as long as I get on a team that isn't allergic to standing on the capture point. Since only one Patreon supporter at this level is taking advantage of their perk, and oddly enough using it to promote someone else as if my shit show is going to make anyone famous, Michael Foy invites you to check out ParadiseandFairies.com for a collection of otaku culture videos. No, neither he nor I spelled fairies wrong. That's his last name, for serious. If you want to see what I'm up to and I'm not monotonously reading scripts co-written by Dresker, check out my Twitter by using @ChaosD1, and if you could give less of a crap about me taunting my friend with photos of the recent Indie Box package, you can follow @MMO_Grinder to keep my ramblings down to merely show updates or MMO-related things. Of course, I have a Patreon, as it's not like I randomly decided to plug a site that has nothing to do with mine, so if you want to support the show, hate ads, or just hate having money in general, I link that on the bottom as well as in the description.